Hey, everybody, Jen Hatmaker here, your host of the For the Love podcast. We're doing this just really dynamic series called For the Love of the Middle. And we're covering all kinds of topics like aging and empty nesting and managing our parents who are getting older, all the hard parts of life that kind of no one prepares you for. Well, for our premium listeners, we wanted to extend this conversation a bit with a beloved friend of mine, a dear person to me, Jenny Hutt. She is smack in the middle of her life, just like us, and she can talk all things about being the sandwich generation, which is what? What is that? Well, for those of you who maybe don't know, it's this generation of people, usually in about their 40s and 50s, somewhere in that range, who are both responsible for raising our own children and getting them launched. And Jenny and I talk about this quite a bit. Even when they're launched at the young adult stage, they still need a lot of parenting, and also caring for our aging parents, and also probably still working full time. You're not retired. So you still have this whole full adult life, and you're kind of being tugged at both sides. So it's double the responsibilities, double the caretaking. And we're kind of doing it all. And in some cases, trying to hang on for dear life. My parents are still relatively healthy. But in the last 5 years, we have been through cancer and surgeries. And I mean, we're experiencing that in our family right now. And then, of course, I've got one kid still at home and 4 in various stages of launch, but not really. And so I understand this. I understand feeling like, whoa, which way do I go? So whether you're managing being a part of the sandwich generation, or you're just mentally preparing yourself for that phase of life, which will come. If you're not to it, it's not that far away. You could be been there, done that. I think you're going to love this raw and tender and good and hopeful conversation with my friend Jenny. Jenny Hutt is the host of the Just Jenny podcast, and then for years hosted the Just Jenny radio show on Sirius XM. She's also the founder of Bunny Eyes Eyewear. The tagline is "Not your mother's reading glasses," and I adore that. And I have easily a dozen pairs. She actually just lost her father in November. And so she has just entered this post-sandwich part of life. But as we talk about at length, managing someone's affairs and estate after they are gone can either be sort of tidy and managed and well prepared for, or it can be an absolute burden. And you're going to hear her talk through that too. And so she had so many good things to say about navigating both spaces. And I love her. We became friends via her show. She found me and she was like, "Can you come be on my show the next time you're in New York?" And I was like, "Absolutely." And we've been friends ever since. And so I'm delighted to have her in my space, and I'm delighted to introduce her to you if you've never met her before. So without any further ado, here is just a really special conversation with my friend Jenny Hutt. So I told my listeners just a little bit about you, but would you, for my people that are kind of new to you and new to your work, would you give the high level, this is my deal, this is where I'm at, this is my thing, this is my people? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, okay. I am 53, so I'm a lady of a certain age. Mm-hmm. I was, trained, I went to law school, so I'm technically a lawyer. I am married with 2 adult kids. For 17 plus years, I had a show on Sirius XM. There were several years I had a co-host, and then much of that time I did not. I did a few TV shows along the way. I co-created reading glasses called Bunny Eyes that are really cool. And then I left Sirius XM in the fall and launched a podcast in November. And then along the way, over these past whatever many years. I lost my mom 15 years ago, and I just lost my dad
We're about
3
to
months
talk
ago.
about that.
Yeah. So,
and you've been in New York this whole time, right?
I have.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
That
lived
is
here.
home. That's home base.
Yeah. And the other thing is that I lost a lot of weight years ago, which for
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
reason is still like more a thing for other people than it is for me. Cause I just kind of live like this now in a very sort of present way. Like I have to work on my body and take care of myself in order to not be heavy for me, but it's just my life at this point.
Well, you just talked just for a second about that, because that was a substantial part of your story. And I'm still, of course, when obviously I follow you everywhere on socials, and still captures the interest of your community. And because you lost like a bunch of weight.
I did. Yeah. I lost like 70 pounds and I'm only 5'2". So it was like a person, half a person, a child, small child in weight. Yeah. Yeah. It was significant. I went through a lot.
How long ago, Jenny? How long ago
that was, so I started dieting, I think in 2009, and I probably got to around this size around mid 2010. So at this point it's 13 years. And so I look at pictures and I still feel like the same person on the inside, but I know that I'm not, because as we evolve as people, we evolve as people anyway. So it's sort of like there's parts of me that are very different from who I was then. My whole, I guess, affect and maybe how I dress and my level of comfort in my body. So my mom and I always had a sort of difficult something with my body in pretty much every other way. She was an incredible mother, but she had a really hard time separating herself from me. And so like she hated her body, and I had her legs and I had her knees. And so I think she just saw herself and couldn't really detach herself. So my weight was her problem, which then became my problem from the time I was like 8 years old. And there was a lot of trauma and a lot of abuse surrounding that. Again, it's weird because it's sort of fragmented because so much else was incredible with my mom. So it's a weird sort of duality, but it wasn't until she died that I guess that anger that like consciously I knew I wanted to lose weight, but subconsciously there was no way in hell I was going to do it and give her that satisfaction while she was on Earth.
I see.
So I don't think it's shocking that I was able to do it after she
was gone,
died. Yeah. And it's, she'd get such a kick out of me now. So it's like, there's this part of me that's even more sad because I know that. And also I think when you lose someone, our relationship has improved since she died. Like I
understand.
I really know where she was coming from as a mother. And it was just, she did the best she could with what she came into this world with. So I have so much compassion for what she went through that has sort of changed the anger to forgiveness and understanding.
Let's stay there for just a second. Where today on the show, we're talking about sort of the sandwich generation that you and I are in, where we're between our parents are here, our kids are grown / launch, health, which you've dealt with that too. Our parents are health, and we're here kind of still working full time, still like in the meat of adulthood. It's such a challenging place to be. And so, as you mentioned, you lost your mom 15 years ago almost. And then you just recently lost your dad, which you were like really tender about publicly. And it was just like a fragile space that you invited your community into, which was so vulnerable. And so I wonder, you've told us a little bit about your mom. Can you tell us a little bit about your dad?
Yeah. So I think I'm still in that place, though habits are an incredible thing, right? Because every day I've managed since he died to get up, do what I have to do, get through the day and go to sleep. So my body is getting used to that life, which is very, very different from when he was here. I was one of his primary caretakers. Yeah. We all live really close by, next door. So, and I was kind of his point person to reassure him all the time that he was okay. And all I could do without lying, because I didn't want to lie to him ever, was to say to him, you're okay right now. Like right now you're safe. Right now you're okay. Because I couldn't tell him that he'd be okay forever, but I also wasn't willing to come up with some sort of timeline because I didn't know it. It was cancer, and I didn't know what was going to be. So my dad was this larger than life personality. He was super influential in the music business. He had a really sort of big life. He lived very large. He was a terrible planner. And when he died, he was not prepared to die. And so his estate is a freaking mess.
Yeah.
And amidst the grief, which is bad enough, we are dealing with a lot of stuff that needs cleaning up. And it's very, very hard. Really, really hard.
Yeah. Being
the sandwich generation like you, Jen, I have kids who are big and launched or mostly launched. But you also have some who are not. So I'm actually they're technically launched, but in 2023, are the kids ever really, really launched until they're much older? I mean, my kids are 22 and 24.
Right. One
is in his second year of law school and the other one graduated college and is working and they're both doing great. Like, I'm so proud of them. But I think, and though you asked me about my dad, they were really close to my dad. So when my mom passed away, my father kind of took up the slack of being like grandfather plus grandmother to them. And while he did have a second wife after my mother passed away, my mom was she still mentioned all the time. Like our glasses company is called Bunny Eyes after her. She was Bunny. She was magnificent and magical and gorgeous and obsessed with all the kids. And so he's had to sort of do double duty. And his death has really sucker punched the kids as well as the adults. So we've all kind of felt it because he was so present in their lives. And then I think sort of like, I don't want to talk about your death because but like you're really well known and famous, right? And so especially like in your world, on your circuits in the speaking world and kind of your community, Jen, and if something were to happen to you, there would be two losses: the loss that the community had because of the way they know you, and then the loss that your family has and the people who really are intimately involved with you. Because as much as you share, you can't share you have to be able to have some things that you retain for yourself and for your family.
Of course.
So that kind of part is a little bit strange because while there was a public sort of, my dad was memorialized in the Grammy Awards because he was a big muckety muck in the music business. And he did a lot of incredible work for other people. And so there's sort of that public acknowledgement of the loss, which is very different from the private. It's my dad.
Of course.
It's my dad. So that's like a strange kind of dynamic that's only added to it, because then you're also dealing with people's questions and comments, and some of it's really, 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 really strange. But for the most part, people have been incredibly kind and tried to lift me up. But grief is really difficult. And then right before he died, I lost my job. That was when my Sirius XM job ended. So it was like, oh, this is fun. So that's when I launched the podcast. And so the first sort of 5, 6, 7, 10 to 12 episodes, I'm pretty much crying. And that's cool. What are you going to do?
It's so much happened at once for you. That was a lot of loss. And yet at the same time, you're still supposed to be you're still a wife, right? And you're still like a mom, and your kids still like, listen, anybody who thinks young adults are like launched at 22 and 24 just doesn't have them yet. Like,
correct.
I mean, they are, but they're like not. And I mean, they still need a lot of parenting. And then you've got a career change that you're navigating, just unwanted. And then you've got your health, which is like an ongoing priority for you. So I can't imagine there wasn't a moment in there where you just thought, I cannot do all this. I can't hold it all together. Did you feel that way? How did you do it?
So your listeners should know that you are really kind and really good, like in real life. I'm going to start to cry. I knew, we know each other 7 years or whatever. And we've always we just connected from the time we met. And there was this understanding that you could lean on me, I could lean on you. And it was never something that had to be said. It was just like a weird connect. Like sometimes you connect with someone and you just do. And when you went through the stuff that you went through and were so broken and open and putting one foot in front of the other, I was mesmerized and fascinated, and I couldn't turn away. And maybe a part of me knew that at some point in my life, I'd need that resource. I'd need that example of what to do when your whole world feels like it's crumbled right in front of you and you're completely powerless. So I called you. I called you before my dad died because I knew there was like some crazy stuff that was going to go on. And you're so kind and really said everything right. And I'm so grateful because there were few people that I felt like I could just unload. And when you're at that point of what feels like desperation, it feels like the end of your rope, it does feel like a lifeline when there's a person who will listen and won't fix the problem, but they'll listen. There's something about just knowing someone is there. And I knew that so you would be, and you were. And so look, to answer your question, I don't really know how I've made it day to day and how I keep doing everything I'm doing. I just do it. And I liken myself, and I've said this before, I liken myself to that toy we had as kids, the Weeble. Weebles wobble, but we don't fall down. And that's me. Like, there's something in me that keeps me going. And in a way, I'm really lucky. I've never had sort of the kind of sadness that rises to the level of actual depression. I've never had sort of suicidal ideation. Never. It's not in my wiring. So I keep going. And do I kick, scream, cry? Yeah. Am I not as resilient yet as I like to be? Yeah. But I know I'll be okay. I know I'm scrappy. And I really care that like my kids are breathing and my husband's breathing and my dogs are breathing and my family's okay. That's and just okay enough. If I can't go on vacation for like years, I don't really care. Like I like to connect with people, and hopefully my struggle will help someone else. Like I try to really see kind of the bigger picture, but I also try to see it moment to moment. Because if I look too far ahead, that's when like I can't really breathe because I do have anxiety.
Yeah, that's so familiar. I still have to whack down anxiety. Sometimes that's the thing that'll spike for me. I'm like you, I'm not predisposed toward depression or those really low lows. It's just, that's just also same. It's not really my disposition, but the anxiety piece is real. Yeah. And I had to get help with that. I couldn't manage it on my own. But when I look at your story, and when you and I were on the phone that day and you were just scaffolding yourself for the very impending storm, which you knew, to more than one front, you knew a bunch of stuff I'm about to lose. Yes. And I remember thinking, and I don't remember what I said, but I remember thinking for sure that you have built your life in such a way that you are just deeply rooted. And so we get here to this middle place between aging parents that we are we're caregivers and we are losing our parents and our kids are launch-ish. And those deep roots hold. Like it's hard to explain, but like you're not a flash in the pan. You didn't just piss your life away and then get to 53 and have to figure out what to do when a couple of the really big pillars fall. You had done it forever in your marriage, in your family, with your dad, in your career, like your community, your online community, your listening community is years and years and years and years and years and years loyal and in the making. And so when I'm talking to folks right now who are like around our age and we're starting to experience the pressure cooker that this age has to offer, it's hard to be able to say, I hope you've been building in like scaffolding to your life all this time, because you'll need it. A fun thing for me that I've told you about before is that my 3 a.m. nighttime brain wants to wake up and think about, well, like health insurance premiums that are due and my children's future and the state of all of our cars and what I said that one time to that one person. But also a fun thing for me now is that 3 a.m. brain is no longer invited to the party because of one thing: Focal CBD sleep gummies. They have changed my sleep game entirely. First of all, they work in that they have solved my middle of the night problems, but they're also yummy, like healthy sleep candy. I don't know what kind of magic makes them so effective because I'm not a scientist, but there's no weirdness in these. There's nothing bad. It's only good stuff only. Okay. So maybe you are a champion sleeper. If so, congratulations. And you just need a little focus during the day. Guess what? Focal has daytime gummies too. So I've got a code for you. If you want to change your brain game, For the Love is your code to get 20% off at focal.com. But really, sleep is priceless. So you can thank me later. So that's Focal, FOCL.com. And your code is For the Love for 20% off. I'm thinking about people listening today that are a decade, 15 years behind us.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't know. I don't know how to handle any of that they're talking about. I don't know how to talk about my dad who gets cancer, or I lose a parent, or my kids grow up and move out like they say they're going to do. But the truth is, if you're just building a sturdy life all along the way, and not a fancy life, not a perfect life, God, no, that's not a real thing. But that centerpiece will hold, and it has for you. And like, you got to draw on all those places that you've been making deposits forever and ever. And you could make withdrawals when you had to, like your family.
Yeah, I mean, emotional withdrawal. Yeah. I mean, I think the terror that comes with change, it happens for pretty much all of us in whatever circumstance. I mean, just
Totally.
moving from broadcast to podcasting, I wanted to throw up. Like, I thought I couldn't speak anymore. I was like, how could I possibly do a podcast? I don't know how to record. Like, I was so confused by the whole dynamic being different from being live every day. I'm still completely off about it. I do an episode every single day because I don't know how to do it any other way. So I have
That's
this,
right. That's your rhythm.
It's my rhythm is like, go, 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 go. And I don't know how to take a beat. And so that's a bit, it's hard. That's hard because I can't slow down. I'm like a shark. I feel like I can't slow down or I'll die. That's like the fear of that. And then I'm not actually die, but like the feeling of, and maybe it's a feeling of being irrelevant if I take a step back rather than dying. And then what you were talking about, the scaffolding, one way I've looked at this with all of the like difficult stuff I have to do with probably moving and cleaning out houses and selling things and doing is this idea of starting from here. I can't go back and fix things that I wish were done a different way now, because that's done. So I can be informed by some of it, but the only way forward is actually forward. So if a crisis hits, cry about it, scream about it, kick about it, and have all the feeling. But then also you have to start from there and start that almost rebuilding process with your roots. So like, you could think of a house that has a foundation, but the house is a gut renovation, but it just has the foundation left. So I might not have to burrow into the ground, but I feel like I'm building bit by bit. And it's scary, but also I'm choosing to do my best to see much of it as almost liberating and an opportunity for this next phase in my life and in my husband's life and in our kids' lives. And I mean, I'm not like my marriage, and I'm a real talker like you are. I don't, you will never see me posting my husband and I just making out on social media and going on, date night 6 times a week or whatever. Date night is like being home watching TV on the couch at the same time. Like, that's date night. But we have a really strong, I'd say we have a really strong foundation. We really work at it. And we're in our hardest time right now because we're both reeling from a death in many ways. Our kids are in and out. There's also that thing like when you have adult children, you can treat them like adults, sort of, but they're like adult light. They're like diet adults.
Gosh.
They're not fully there.
Diet adults.
You can't like completely burden them with your ish because it's not really for them.
Yeah.
But they're also not babies. So like my daughter yesterday called me and said, Mom, you have to remember, you got to ask. And she named all the people in our family, our extended family. You got to ask so-and-so, 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 how they are. I know you're in the midst of X, Y, and Z, but you have to remember to check in on people. Now, I was always the one to check in on people. Yeah. But as of late, I'm just, trying to stay above surface like a duck waddling, like you see them on the surface, but all that paddling that's going on underneath. And so I was like, you know what, you're right. Which was hard to say because who wants to tell their 22-year-old that they're correct when they're giving you a critique? Yeah, right.
And they got plenty of them too, you guys. So everybody get excited. Your young adults will tell you what you have done wrong and how to do it better. I can guarantee you that.
Yes, and they're not usually really that correct, but she was right, and I was like,
sometimes they're right. Yep.
Yeah, and I was like, thank you. Okay, thank you, and I did a 180 and I checked in with everybody and I took a deep breath and I spoke to my therapist that night because now I'm back in therapy and because that's my responsibility is to take care of me so I could take care of everybody else. And that was my wall. My wall was that I had gone inward. I tend to go inward.
Me too.
Yeah.
So let's talk more for a second about parenting young adults, because a big part of our space in the timeline is that it is this very strange, like I cannot count how much ink was spilled teaching me how to have a baby, how to have a toddler, like how to structure my life with my learning centers so that they were intellectually stimulated. I had so much input for littles, for raising littles and babies. That's just what everybody wants to talk about developmentally. It sometimes feels like a wasteland out there on instruction on how to parent young adults.
It's the worst. It's the worst.
People aren't talking about it as much. It also has an absolute upside. I sure do like my adults. I enjoy them as human people. So I'm not a doomsdayer here at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love having them at this age and I love watching them go, but it is complicated as a mom. Yeah. I find it complicated.
Yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, somebody should have said to us before we had kids, you're going to have children and you're going to be tired and it's going to be fun when they're babies. It's also going to be awful when they're babies. And then they're going to grow up and they're going to leave you. And when they leave you, you're going to feel like they're gone for good. And you're also going to feel like you're not going to make it. And you're going to have like a gaping wound most days in your belly because they've left. And the lack of what you thought was control over their safety and well-being. We never really have control, but we think we have control over their safety and well-being when they're young. Now we really don't have control over their safety and well-being because they're not in our house. They're not in our home. And so I'm a terrible mother in this way because I'm a nervous wreck. And my kids have given me, because they are kind and generous, they've allowed me to track their location, to have it, but I am not allowed to stalk. And I am not allowed to question. Okay. Lucky for me, again, it's just wiring. And I believe it's because of my anxiety, because of the thing that matters the most to me is that everybody is healthy and okay. I don't really care what they're doing. And I really mean that. I mean, obviously I don't want them hurting people and doing bad stuff. No, but I don't really care what they're doing. If they're good people and they feel okay, as long as they're breathing, we're good. So they know I don't judge if they're out with friends or who they're out with or what they're doing and when. I don't really care. I care when it's 3:00 in the morning and I track and they're out and I'm just nervous because I want them safe. So for me, it's all about safety. So it's really hard. That part's really hard when you feel like the world is just full of harm with your very fragile adult kids who aren't fragile at all, but like, I think they're super fragile. They're my kids. So I'm lucky that they're generous with me and they stay in touch. My daughter is a constant communicator. She's an expert communicator like me. My son will give me read receipts on text messages so that I know he's alive. I get proof of life and I get location. but I don't get constant conversation. I don't
Receipts.
get, I don't get his voice every day. And when I try to, he'll tell me I'm needy. And then I say, yes, I am.
Correct.
And what, am I going to deny it? No. But the two kids fundamentally, and I do credit my husband with much of this, because I was often working during their dinner hour when they were little. And my husband was able to be home when they were having dinner because his office was close by. And at that time, when they were real little, I was working out of the house. And then I was able to structure my life to work in the house, but they were still doing homework with him. They're both really doing great. So I see that part of it. I see where they are super responsible and mindful. Yeah, kids, I mean, we have to explain to my daughter, like, a lot of those Uber charges will add up. And so, like, think before you take an Uber. Obviously, if it's dark, you take your Uber. But if it's a beautiful spring day, you walk. Like, we try to sort of navigate that with a 22-year-old because they're money pits when they can choose to be. So, yeah, there are no rule books with raising young adults. We tried to instill work ethic in them, and we did. Yeah. And they're good people. That matters. Do they have moments of being jerks? Yeah, they're kids, young adults. But so far, so good. It's they're doing fine. It's I'm the one who's compromised. And I guess, I mean, they both have, I do apologize to them often. I mean, genetically, they both have anxiety. It's my fault and my husband's fault, my dad's fault, my mom's fault. Like, they had it from a lot of sides. So it would have been really tough for them to not have it, but they seem to both really just live their lives in a different way from how I did. Like, it doesn't paralyze them at all. Like, they travel, they leave the house, they do things that I don't.
Our kids' generation manages their mental wellness way better than we did. Now, to be fair, they have approximately 1 million more tools than we had. Nobody was talking to us about mental wellness.
No, it was an abandonment. They had that was like a deficit. They just didn't care. They just didn't care when we were kids.
No language around it. None. Like, nobody was in therapy. We didn't have any of that. We didn't have those tools. Our parents didn't have them and they didn't give them to us, but we got them as adults and we gave them to our kids.
That's right.
And so I noticed that in general, their generation hits they face their issues way more head on.
Differently,
And they're not, they don't have stigma around whatever it takes to process that or manage it.
That's right.
And I'm going to just give it to us. We get some of the credit for that because we handed our kids therapy and we handed them antidepressants if they needed it or whatever. We cared about their little mental wellness. And so they're pretty good about it. So we're the ones we're that middle generation, literally, where we are trying to parent what we didn't receive, but we're still kind of like the tug of war in our own bodies and minds.
You're right. Our parents never, I mean, at 23, I knew I needed therapy. And I told my mother I was going to go to a psychiatrist, and my mother called me an a-hole. She couldn't believe, like, it was such a betrayal to her that I would go and talk to a doctor.
Exactly.
Like, it was too implicating or something. And I say to my kids, like, implicate me, please. Like, I definitely have messed you up differently from how my parents messed me up. But like, do what you have to do. You tell your therapist, if you have one, anything you want about me, I'm cool.
Parents, I don't know about you, but I feel like we can always use a little or frankly a lot of help and guidance from other experts and leaders here, especially all of us parents of tweens and teens. This particular age group has its own set of challenges and bumps and roadblocks to navigate, and it all can just feel like a lot. That is exactly why I developed a me course to guide you through this season of tweening and teening. This e-course is entirely on demand and jam-packed with my own greatest learnings that I'm so grateful and delighted to share, along with very practical and actionable steps that you can take in your own life with your own kids. I also brought in my friend and shame-proof parenting expert, Mercedes Samudio, for this course to help us learn to parent well without shame. Doesn't that sound great? We cover how to establish healthy communication with your kids, what to do about codependency, which may not be what you think it is, how to build connections, because tons more, honestly. I tell you a lot of personal stories of my not just successes, but failures as a parent. And plus, you're going to love Mercedes. We've also packed this me course to the brim with so many digital resources to help you parent your kids in healthy, connected, non-shaming ways. If you have questions about parenting your growing kiddos, y'all, this is your course.
Let me ask you this question, let me switch gears back to the other half of the sandwich.
Yeah.
Because you are literally going through this in real time right now. If you're willing to talk about this a little bit, let me see how to phrase this. What conversations should we be having with our parents who are getting older right now about managing their affairs while they're here?
Yeah.
What feels maybe to us on this side of it, like, oh, he should probably deal with this, but he hasn't, but it's fine. And it's not fine. It's a disaster. And it is so hard. It's already hard. You're already missing him. And then there's all the stuff. And so what would you say as to us in the middle that we should be absolutely insisting on with our parents?
Okay. I'm going to tell you there's a few things. So there is a book called For You When I'm Gone by Rabbi Steve Leder. You should have him on your podcast. He is, obviously he's a rabbi, but he's not much like you, he's not a rabbi who's there to tell you that you have to be Jewish. It has nothing to do with being Jewish. This book is about the emotional will. It's about the things you want people to know about you, that you could leave for them beyond whatever are your personal effects, whether positive or negative, whether it's a win or a loss. It's about the stuff on the inside. So I think it's really important to have those kind of conversations, if possible, about what you want your legacy to be, or your parents want their legacy to be from just the who that they are. It's a beautiful book. And it has these examples and different stories of these sort of emotional wills that people have given. It's beautiful. For You When I'm Gone, and a conversation starter. So that's really strong. Some parents are stubborn. So my mother had my parents were married. They had a very traditional, in the sense of they got married in 1960 or whatever it was. I guess my brother was born in 66. So they probably got married 62. I don't know. So she had no anything, like, I don't know what she died with or without in terms of that kind of stuff, but I didn't have to know because my dad was here.
That's right.
So it was just pure loss. My father was really unprepared. Like, I don't think he'd updated a will in many, since right after my mother died. I'm not sure he'd had a will before my mother died. Yeah. And so that was messy. And he just didn't want to have any of the conversations like that. Like, we tried to talk about, but he couldn't face it. So I think death is obviously death is really hard and scary. Like, who wants to die? I don't want to die. So I think he felt like if you talked about it, you were almost dancing with the devil, that you were almost asking for something bad. And I think up until when he did die, like, he couldn't deal with the fact that it was going to happen. Well, we all knew. So I think while your parents are still healthy is when you have to have the conversation. And it's pretty simple. It's things like, if there are bank accounts, designate somebody to automatically have the bank account upon your death. So that you don't even need a will for that. I forget the name of it, but you don't need a will. If there are places where there's financial instability, deal with that while you're alive, because there's a greater ease to manage that sort of thing during life than there is during death. If your affairs are not together at the time of death, there's tons of paperwork to get through before you can even find money to pay people that you want to pay because they've been employees over years, or because they've done whatever, and you can't because there's no access if things aren't properly put in place prior to death. It's really crazy, the red tape. Like, just to appoint somebody as a executor of a will can take 6 months or 8 months or 10 months. And until that time, legally, there's very few things you can actually do with the estate. So you live in this like limbo place that is incredibly uncomfortable. Pay for your funerals before you die. Like, let's start there. That's a huge, funeral expenses are insane. Like, I used to never understand why people did GoFundMe's for funerals, because I'm just out of touch. I mean, I'm out of touch, but I didn't have to do it. So I never knew what a funeral cost. Funerals are incredibly expensive. And just getting a freaking, like a death certificate is complicated sometimes. Right. I couldn't believe the things we went through. Like, we couldn't get a death certificate. My father dies, and we have a back and forth with the funeral parlor about the death certificate because his doctors were from the city and he died in the suburb. And somehow things are now only online, but one hospital can't seem to access this and the funeral. His body had to go to a medical examiner at the 11th hour to get. It was crazy, and we didn't need that. Like, we didn't need that extra stress. So look, ask all the questions you want answers to, because if you don't ask them now, as uncomfortable as they might be, you're never going to be able to ask them. Like, you have to remember that. It's like, actually now or not going to happen because they're going to die. So that's where, I look back and I think, I mean, I tried to have certain conversations again that he just was unwilling to have and didn't want to share certain things. And I have to give him grace because there's so much more good than there was not with him. And human beings are fallible, Jen. Like, none of us are perfect. So sometimes we get sort of the worser stuff after someone's gone that we have to deal with, but it doesn't negate all like the incredible stuff that happened during their lifetime. And you sort of have to reconcile it. But
great point.
But in terms of what you say to them, look, if you're thinking about asking a question, ask the question. I mean, that's good. Right? Like, in the moment, just do it. You have to.
Yeah. That's so good. Oh,
it's hard.
And a good word really for all of us, because we're not guaranteed another 40 years. Like, none of us are immune to death or disability or disease, none. And so, like, even now, I'm thinking my financial advisor forced me to do all the stuff that you're talking about. Forced me. I got a whole folder that says, if I die, and it is everything. Like, I'm like, I don't want to do all this. He's like, you're doing it. And so really, this is due diligence that every adult person should do.
Wait, like once my dad died, I mean, my kids, there's the beauty of all this, it doesn't feel beautiful, but is that it's all on the table with my adult children.
I'm sure it is now.
They know everything. They know everything about their parents. Meaning my husband and me. They know where to go if something were to happen. My husband and my son just took a boys' trip, the two of them, which they both needed, the burnout between the two of them. I was like, just go, goodbye, go. And as they were walking out the door, I said to my husband, all right, on that account, just remind me, did you already put that I'm the beneficiary? And as they're walking out, he's like, are you really doing this? I'm like, yes, because I just need to double check. Because I can't have you go out the door. I don't want to do this. Like, I was hysterically. It's like when they leave, I think they're going to war. Like, that's my anxiety. I'm crying. It's awful, Jennifer. Like, I have to keep myself to get like literally the tears. And I'm like, did you do this? Is this? And what's the insurance company that I need to know? Like, and what's your password? Because I'm not the wife who snoops. I don't remember. I honestly don't remember my husband's iCloud password. I can remember everyone else's. I just don't keep it like
totally
in there. But when they walked out the door, I knew all of it. And even like my kids with my watch, my son's like, I get your watch because Raquel gets your jewelry because my stupid jewelry, my engagement ring, great legacy. But we do it all
but you've managed it already. You've managed it. It's done.
It now.
It's not a question.
Nope.
It's such a relief. And then I think if if we've been through it like you have, we can. And then think about putting our own kids and their families through it. It is such a burden to make them figure all this out
Horrible.
and get passwords they were never given and try to have access that they weren't granted. And then of course forfeit a lot of the estate to just bureaucracy. And so we don't want that.
No.
Like we don't want to experience it and we don't want to pass it on. And so it feels morbid to talk about, after death stuff, but none of us are making it out of this thing. So this is going to happen. It is going to happen. So thank you for talking so candidly about that and just about just the space that we are. And, without the luxury of just leisure time, because you're still full-time worker. You are still a busy lady.
It just feels awkward still though, to ask for help. I mean, it just feels weird. Like I like to be self-sufficient.
Same.
But I do think, much like when you have gone through all the things you've gone through and shared it, look, we all find our purpose at different points in our lives. And I do think that one of my biggest purposes is to show that you can live through things that feel like you can't live through them. Like that it doesn't have to be pretty. Yeah. You're going to cry. It's going to be awkward. There are days that I'm like, I want to throw my phone out the door and just disappear. But I know that there's somebody listening or watching who has their own like extraordinary turmoil and feels all the things. You feel shame, you feel sadness, you feel confusion, you feel worry. And seeing somebody like still move through it, I think there's incredible power in that. So like, let me be that vessel. Like, let me be the person who shows you like you can still get up the next day and you could still like be in your life. And no, it's not going to maybe look the way you thought it would. And you're not going to do it in a way that's extraordinarily glossy, but it doesn't matter. You're still going to be able to do it. So
that's right.
I do show up because I know that while like my community is a lifeline for me, a lifeline for me, like I want to be there for them. Like I want to be there to let someone else know that they will get through whatever is that storm or that season. You just did this. You just had on Instagram recently about the season being longer than anticipated. Yeah.
It's just life. It's life for all of us. And so, people held up lanterns for us and now we hold them up for other people. It's how it works. And they will do the same. And in that way, we just kind of light the path for each other. Somebody has been through what we're going through and somebody will go through what we've gone through.
That's right.
It's just how it goes. Like we're connected on this road. And so this is what you do beautifully in your work and you always have, and you always will continue. All right. This is the last question. Everybody gets it. You can answer this however you want. Like generally, this is how you feel today.
Okay.
What's saving your life right now?
Such a good question. Ugh. It's moment to moment. I mean, look, I have obviously my dogs and my family are great. And don't tell my kids I said my dogs first, but I really love my 4 little dogs.
They're not listening to our podcast. Don't worry about it.
They're not. Definitely not. They have zero interest. I really think I think it's what you've talked about. I think it's that thing in my belly. I think we all have to rely on ourselves ultimately and know that we can find our way through it. I think that's really it. Like it's got to come from you. And if that thing in you knows you'll get there through faith or through support of a friend or family, great. But you have in your belly to make that decision that you're going to survive whatever is that thing. Yeah, and then you find the tools.
That's
whatever those tools are. Yeah.
And they do exist. And the way that you survive it is literally sometimes just hour at a time.
Oh my God. Yes.
Like, don't look too far ahead, folks.
Oh no.
No. Maybe get to the end of the day. Try that one.
Get to dinner.
Get to dinner. Get to dinner. And then tomorrow, get to tomorrow's dinner. Mm-hmm. And before you know it, you've strung a bunch of days together. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we do recover. It is a marvel to both witness and experience. Tell everybody very quickly, name of your show, where to find it, where to listen to it, and you on socials, all the things.
So my podcast is called Just Jenny with Jenny Hutt. You could get it anywhere you get your podcast. So Apple, Stitcher, iHeart, Spotify, wherever podcasts are. Just Jenny with Jenny Hutt. It's there. You can listen to the episodes in all sorts of orders. There's a lot of them. Just put anyone on, it'll make sense to you. Just Jenny Hutt on Instagram, Jenny Hutt, TikTok and Twitter. And then I have a Patreon, but it's pretty lame. But if you want to support the podcast, because it doesn't really make money because I just started it, feel free to, spend $5 a month on Patreon, but whatever.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I love
That's
it.
my marketing. I'm the worst. Yeah.
The worst at it. It's pretty lame, but if you want to, I'll take your $5.
If you like me, thanks.
And you guys, that's HUTT. It's 2 T's. And I'll link all that for you, listeners. I'll put everything in one roundup so you could just hit follow and get it everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
But just remind your people that you're really that good. I just hope they all know that you're, in real life, you're just that good. Like they should just know that.
That is the nicest thing to say. Thank you. I'm so happy that we are friends. I'm so happy that you found me in this weird world. Yeah. And then you're and I just love you because you're so you. So you're just come be on the show. And I'm like, okay, I will. For some reason, it comes with such authority from you. I'm like, okay, yes, then here I come. And I just know, Jenny, that no matter what happens, if I need you, I can call you. And that is a wonderful place to be in a relationship that, and without judgment. So thanks for being exactly who you are. All right. That's it, my friend. That's it. Have a great day.
Thank you for having me. You too. Thank you. Bye.
All right, you guys. Thank you for listening. If you head over to jenhatmaker.com, under the podcast tab, we will have everything you need for this episode. The notes, the links, all of Jenny's socials, everything. Also the link to her podcast, which you will love because she's very smart. She's very quick-witted and she's thoughtful and interesting. And so her take on the world in general is just fascinating. So you'll love listening to her show for sure. And I sure love having her in my life as a friend. All right, you guys, see you next time.